I'm Mark Dawson from the Self-Publishing Show, and this is Self-Publishing Spotlight, where we shine a light on the indie authors who are changing the world of publishing, one book at a time.
Hello and welcome to the Self-Publishing Spotlight. We meet indie authors at all stages of their careers and ask them a series of 5 questions. 5 questions about their process, their mistakes and their successes. 5 answers that will help you level up your own author career. My name's Tom Ashford and I'm part of the Self-Publishing Formula. Don't forget that you can get your self-publishing resource kit at selfpublishingformula.com/starter kit. This week's guest is Karen Purves. She's written one book in the non-fiction genre and she lives in the UK. Welcome, Karen.
Hi there, Tom.
So you've written a non-fiction book. Do you want to talk about what sort of, the specific genre in which that actually is?
Yep. So it's a book on gratitude. And so it's self-help, positive psychology, spirituality, depending on where you come from. And the book is open up at random, choose a topic that arrives, read the words and do some of the suggested actions. So, and I wrote the book because gratitude has been an enormous help to me in my life. So I wanted to share that with other people and give them the opportunity of finding gratitude. Nice.
Okay, well, question number 1 is, why do you write? So I guess you've kind of, answered that in the sense that you wanted to share the idea of, gratitude, etc.
Yeah, that's just for that book. But why I write is that I've got something to write about. So, gratitude was one thing. The next thing is really about, it's about writing. Some may say it's a memoir, but I've done some memoir courses and I don't easily fit into memoir. I think it's just going to be about some topics that I have found difficult to live through, but liberating once addressed, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
If you like downsizing, changing countries, belonging has been a big life lesson for me. That spanned my whole life. So I don't know how these will end up being in a book, but they're the topics that and aging. I write a lot about aging.
Okay. Cool. And would you write any sort of fiction, do you think, or is it explicitly non-fiction that you're passionate about?
I'm not going to say that I'm not going to write fiction, because I wonder whether actually some of these things are better written about as fiction.
Right.
The only reason why I'm happier with nonfiction is that I've actually read more nonfiction books in my life than I've read fiction books. So I've done some courses about that, but I'd need to read a lot more fiction books to really understand how the cliffhangers inside the different chapters actually works.
Right. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's a
different approach.
It's a way of writing that I instinctively don't know about.
Yeah, that's fair. And you're indie published, correct?
I am indeed, yes.
Did you try to get a traditional contract, or would you be interested in one in the future, or are you quite happy?
I did. So I wrote the book in Australia, and so Australia I think is different to the UK or Europe or America, in that it's a smaller market. And I went to some courses that were being offered by publishers, and I'm not sure whether that happens here. And to really work out what I wanted to do. And the only thing, they were interested, the traditional publishers, the small publishers that I was looking at, they were interested in what my book was about, and they saw it had a real place in the world. But their lead times, so I still wouldn't be published.
Right. Yeah.
So they were saying, well, if you came in with us, you wouldn't be published until Easter 2020. And I went, oh my God, at that time, that was 2018. And I couldn't think what I would be doing. What would my life be like in 2020? Do you know what I mean? It was like, no, I can't do that. I've got the whole of 2019 to live.
Yeah. Not to mention that you end up just basically not writing anything, or writing something knowing that it might not get published because of the turnaround time.
Yeah, and as it turned out, so when I published the book, in February 2019. So look, that's a lot of months before a traditional publisher would publish. And then I did a physical book tour in Australia. And I mean, that was just brilliant. Because of the book and my story, I like speaking. You might be surprised. So it lent itself, everything lent itself to actually going out and speaking to people and sharing my message. And I mean, I haven't earned the sort of money that many people would earn online, but actually I found it hugely rewarding to do that.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, I always think it'd be lovely to meet the readers, and interacting with readers is something that indie authors get to do more, I think, than those who are traditionally published.
Yeah. Well, I got emails from people, so I had my email address in the book, and people would write to me, and less so now because I'm not really doing author talks, although it's only because I haven't got any scheduled. And people would write to me and say, do you know, your book has actually changed my life.
Wow.
And this is what I was thinking about. And then after a month of doing the different topics, this is how I'm now thinking. And you go, result.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter, really, it doesn't matter whether I earn £1 million or £1,000, although it'd be nice to earn more than 1,000. The book has done its job.
Yeah.
Because that's what it was meant to do.
Yeah. Okay, well, question number 2 is, how do you write? So how do you approach writing a non-fiction book?
Well, I can only tell you how I wrote the gratitude prompts in that it was planned out. So I came up with the concept. I have no idea how that happens, but I came up with the concept. And I then brainstormed. One day I brainstormed what I thought were 40 topics. And really that was more like 80. I didn't know. And then I put them in alphabetical order. And then I did NaNoWriMo so that I had some people to write with. I know it's virtual, but that's what not the November one, but Camp NaNoWriMo in July.
Okay.
So I did Pomodoro on Twitter. And so because Australia was so far away from everywhere, I would only have the Pomodoro Twitter sphere active until around about 11 a.m. So I needed to make sure that I had enough writing and enough chatting with people that I was actually on track. And I set myself up that I'd write 1,000 words a day, which in fiction terms is not really very much, but in non-fiction terms, it's actually, I found it quite a lot. I was quite tired after 1,000 words. Although some days I was on a roll and did 2,500, but I never did any more than that. So at the end of Camp NaNoWriMo, I'd basically written the book. I planned to do 30,000 words. I did 35,000 words. And at the end of the book, like when the book was published, I had 42,700 words. So basically the book was written in that month.
Yeah. Wow, that's impressive. And what sort of software do you use to write, like Scrivener, Word, Vellum?
Scrivener, yeah.
Yeah, the best one.
Yeah. Well, it made it really easy to change everything around. Would I have set up the new book the way I did the old book? Probably not. I've learned so much about Scrivener in the process. But yeah, and it was so easy to print out. Do you know what I mean? Like I could compile it and I could print out the draft copy and I could take it with me and edit, do the first edit and stuff like that. So it was much better.
Yeah, it's very versatile. Okay, so question number 3 is, are you a full-time author? If you are, how did you get there? And if you aren't, what steps are you taking to make it happen?
Well, I did think about this. I don't do anything else, right?
Yeah.
My writing doesn't pay, I have another income. So my writing doesn't pay for my bills. Another income does. But I don't earn, I'm not, like it's a pension of sorts.
Yeah.
So what I do is I do write, because I'm doing nonfiction, I write a lot on Quora. And that's really illuminates what actually I like to be writing about at any one time. So Quora is really my route to writing full time. Not that Quora will earn me money, but it's my apprenticeship, it's my training ground for practicing my writing, because my writing is so different now than it was in 2018 when I started when I wrote the book. Oh, and when I wrote that book, that wasn't the first time I'd started writing a gratitude book either. Like I didn't just think one day I'll write a gratitude book. Yeah. I had actually written 2 other books before that on gratitude and ditched them.
Right, fair enough. Well, I think that's probably fairly common in fiction and non-fiction, isn't it? You sort of, you write a book and you go, nope, and you bin it and you write something else. And most people's first published book isn't the first one that they've actually written.
Yeah.
Okay, well, question number 4 is, what mistakes do you think you've made and what have you got right?
Okay. I think one of my mistakes, it's like a 2-edged sword, really. The book is really best used in your hand because you open the books up at random. And Kindle doesn't really allow you to do that. It's not that friendly to do that. So one of the downsides of the book is that it has to be print.
Right.
One of the positives is that it's print. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the other downside of the fact that it's print is that I needed to spend a lot more money getting the cover designed and creating an internal layout that became easy to understand, that they could find the beginning of a chapter, they could see where the actions were. And that actually made it an expensive book to produce, like to design, because like most people are just looking at the cover and then the chapters run on one after another. You don't have to do any special formatting. Whereas because this book was open it up at random, the beginnings of the chapters of the topics needed to be clear.
Yeah.
And so that needed a treatment. So I don't think that I would do that again, although, the outcome has been great.
Yeah.
What I did do right, I think, is setting aside 2 hours every day to write something. And at the time, I didn't even, that's what I did wrong as well. Okay, so at the time, I didn't reread anything. And so I just wrote it, and I just kept on. Every day I wrote some more, and one of the negatives about that is that I didn't reread it, and I wrote it all in longhand. So then I spent a whole month typing it up. Right. And I would have been better off, because I was under the illusion that if I started typing it up, I would edit it. But actually, I didn't do that. I was just copy typing. And then that was so boring. It took me a month to type. It took me a month to actually write it. And then it took me a month to type it because it was so boring. Yeah. So I would never do that again. I would write it, type it as part of a day's activity.
Cool. Okay. And question number 5 is, what's your final piece of advice for authors starting out in indie publishing?
Well, first of all, just write. And I don't think it matters what you write about. Just practice writing. Because I never really understood that piece of advice when I was starting out. because everyone looked like they could write so much better than me. But now I notice, because I write on Quora and I write sort of 3 articles a day usually, my writing even in 6 months has just changed. How I use language, how I structure my thoughts, and everything else. So that's my number one piece of advice on someone starting out. My number 2 is to go on courses. Like, so I did a lot of this stuff in Australia, so I don't know what it's like in the UK. But there are lots of low-cost courses in Australia to encourage people to write, and I would encourage people to go and learn the format of a book, like the 3 acts of a book, and to create crescendos and stuff like that. I found that fascinating. I had never thought about the anatomy of a book before, and so I found that really, really good. And some of the people, I was then able to have buddies that helped me at that time in writing. Yeah, and if you like writer's circles, then fine, do writer's circles. I never found them particularly helpful, really.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's good advice, and those are your 5 questions up. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you. It's been good.
That's it for this week's Self-Publishing Spotlight. Don't forget that you can get your free self-publishing resource kit at selfpublishingformula.com/starter kit. And if you want to appear as a guest on this show, send us brief details about yourself and your writing at selfpublishingformula.com/spotlight-guest. I'm Tom Ashford, and I'll see you again next week.